The first thing you need to know is this. In America, a man's home isn't just lumber and nails. It's the ledger of every sacrifice he's made. Mine was built on 30 years of calloused hands, missed holidays, and promises kept without witnesses. And yesterday, I learned my own blood was drawing up plans to take it from me. You can call it betrayal. I call it war. You won't believe what I did next. Before we go on, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Because this is a story about honor, grit, and the kind of justice you don't find in courtrooms. I don't hear the kettle whistle. I hear my son deciding my future. Don't say nursing home, say memory care. Sounds kinder, Laura says, voice calm, rehearsed. I'm in my kitchen on Alki Point, teabag in hand, steam fogging the window. The tablet on the counter is still glowing. The video call was supposed to be over. I thought I hit end. I didn't. Their faces are gone, but their voices pour out, tinny, close, like they're crouched under my cabinets. Ethan exhales. Dad's slipping. Told me the neighbor's name was Gary. It's Barry. That's how it starts, Laura says. Little things. By the time the stove goes, it's too late. The stove. My chest tightens. 2 weeks ago, I left a skillet warming when the VA clinic called. No smoke, no fire. 1 minute's distraction became Exhibit A. House is worth at least 1.1, Laura continues. Maybe more with bidding, waterfront, custom carpentry, the whole retired engineer fantasy. We could launch 2 cafes, not 1. 2? Ethan tries to laugh. It dies in his throat. We expand fast or get crushed, she says, and he'll thank us for making the hard choice. The tea bag drips on my knuckles. I don't feel it. My eyes catch the photo on the fridge. Grace on the ferry, hair caught in the wind. She used to say, "Never give so much they forget to be grateful." I told her love always comes back. Tides recede. I'll handle the paperwork, Laura says. Power of attorney. We don't have one, Ethan interrupts. Then we get one. He trusts you. We update emergency contacts, slide it in the stack. People sign what you hand them when you talk about safety. My grip on the counter aches. Safety as camouflage. And, she says, lower now, about the policy. Silence. The clock ticks. A gull screams outside. What policy? Ethan asks. Union term life. If it renewed? No, Ethan snaps. There's no cash value. They are slicing my life into columns. Forgetful, amenable, house-rich. Laura's certainty is a ladder she climbs. I've been holding the bottom rung for years. We need a window, she says. Your dad's checkup is Tuesday. Perfect. Lunch, then swing by the facility. We use words like resort, peace of mind, trial stay. He won't argue. I argued with him once. Ethan, at 11, furious I wouldn't let him ride a dirt bike down the lighthouse path. Grace's hand squeezed mine. Hold. I held. He lived. Now I listen to restaurant noise flood their audio. Plates clatter. A hostess says, Bennett. They're already out celebrating. A knock at the door jolts me. Barry from next door stands there with Meyer lemons. For your tea, he says. Barry, I reply, steady. I'm not slipping. We talk weather, last night's game. But under it, I hear my son in my kitchen, plotting where I'll sign. After Barry leaves, I lower the tablet's volume to a whisper. You don't interrupt a system while it's logging. You let it capture everything. Laura again, bright. We make the house part of the story. Family dinners at the cafe. A table with your name. Martin's table. Don't, Ethan says quietly. Don't make him a mascot. He remembers. And still. He got lost at Trader Joe's, she says. I didn't. They moved the olive oils. That's not losing yourself. That's grief on a grocery aisle. Fine, Ethan says. We do it fast. The screen goes black. Call ended. My kitchen is silent. A softer man would call his son and demand, "How dare you?" I am soft, but not foolish. Outrage would feed their narrative. See? Volatile, paranoid, unsafe. You don't argue with a story someone's eager to believe. You change the ending. The house hums. Old beams breathe. I hear my father's voice in my head. Bubbles dead center, kiddo, teaching me to trust the line more than the noise. I take a pen and legal pad. 3 headings. Legal. Liquidity. Logistics. Clara Jensen, under legal. No email. Call only. Under liquidity. New bank. Private banker. No big transfers. Under logistics. Locks, boxes, storage, new phone number. Keep old line live for noise. My handwriting steadies. The world returns to grid. The phone rings. Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, Dad. Quick thought. After your checkup Tuesday, Laura found this chowder place. I put the phone face down. The shore sucks at the pebbles outside. Another call. Unknown number. Mr. Brooks, this is Melissa from Bayshore Memory Care. Wrong number, I say, and hang up. They've already scheduled it. They're building momentum. I take down the tin box labeled Grace. Beneath recipe cards is a business card. Clara Jensen, ESQ. I dial. It's Martin, I say. I need to sell a house very fast. Don't sign anything, she says. I'll be there in an hour. I look around my kitchen. Every object is a prop in a set that can survive without me. That doesn't hollow me. It focuses me. I run a finger over the initials EB carved in the counterlip at age 10. I have loved my son without condition for 38 years. Today, I add 1. Not at the expense of myself. The kettle screams. I shut it off. Tea can wait. The rest cannot. When Clara knocks, I've got 2 lists. Contacts who don't ask questions, and names of people who would stand beside me if the ground shifted. She steps in, drops her briefcase on the island. Okay, she says, sleeves up. Tell me everything. Fast. Fast is the only speed left. The morning after Clara left, the air in the house felt different. Thin, expectant, like the whole structure was bracing for impact. I woke before the gulls began their racket over the sound, sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the closed door to Grace's closet. I hadn't opened it in 2 years. Not because I couldn't, because I knew that once I did, I wouldn't stop moving until something permanent had changed. The hallway light caught the framed photos along the wall. Ethan's first day of kindergarten, his hand squeezing mine so tight the skin whitened, Grace in the background pretending not to cry. Christmas morning with wrapping paper stuck to the ceiling fan after he dunked on his new basketball hoop. Each frame wasn't just a picture, it was a ledger entry. In the kitchen, my fingers traced the cedar cabinets I'd built the summer Ethan turned 12. Grace wanted a kitchen that feels like a promise. I sold my '67 Mustang, the last project car I rebuilt with my father, to buy the hardware and granite. The smell of fresh-cut cedar mixed with her apple pie had been worth more than the engine's roar. That was the trade. The garage was still a museum of half-finished intentions. The jewelry box I'd been carving for Grace's birthday sat under a fine layer of dust. She never saw it finished. Cancer doesn't wait for perfect timing. Neither, apparently, did betrayal. I stepped into the garden. Dew clung to the blackberry brambles Grace planted. She said the berries tasted sweeter when they fought you. That fence line, set in concrete I mixed by hand, had taken 2 summers of overtime. Every inch of this property carried a cost I'd paid in sweat, missed holidays, and quiet sacrifices. It wasn't a house. It was 30 years of proof I'd kept my word. And last night, I'd learned my son was measuring it in dollars and convenience. The rage from yesterday hadn't faded. It had condensed into something sharper, something that could cut. Grace once told me I saw too much potential in people, especially Ethan. One day, she warned, he'll spend your faith like cash. I'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, wrote one word at the top: exit, not escape. Engineers don't run. We design the way out. The first step wasn't about property. It was about control. If Ethan and Laura thought they could maneuver me, I'd make sure they never got close to the wheel. But I couldn't vanish in a panic. Disappearances create suspicion, and suspicion leaves trails. I needed this to look deliberate, an independent choice they couldn't challenge without showing their hand. Names began to fill the page. Not friends, operators, Clara for legal. Liam Harper, a realtor I'd met years ago when Grace flirted with downsizing. He bragged once that he could start a bidding war in 48 hours if the property had the right story. This house had a story in every nail. Then the thought came. Clean and dangerous. I didn't have to wait for them to make a move. I could flip the sequence. Sell the house on my terms, so fast they wouldn't know until the deed was already signed. Strip them of the only leverage they thought they had. It was risky. If Ethan caught wind, he could stall the sale, make a scene. Timing was everything. I dug out my old calendar. There it was, Napa Valley, next week. 4, maybe 5 days gone. Not enough to close a normal sale, but with the right cash buyer already lined up, doable. My mind was already building the sequence. Day 1, Clara verifies deed. Day 2, Liam circulates private listing to his investor network. Day 3, offers in hand. Day 4 to 5, sign, close, secure funds. By the time Ethan's plane landed, the locks would be changed. A memory blindsided me mid-plan. Ethan, at 21, in a hospital bed after spinning out on a rain-slick road. 3 surgeries, months of rehab. Insurance left a mountain of bills. I worked doubles, took consulting jobs I hated, pawned tools I loved. The night before his last surgery, he gripped my hand and said, "I'll never forget this, Dad." He forgot. The memory didn't soften me. It lit the fuse faster. Sentiment is what lets people walk you to the edge and push, smiling all the while. I walked upstairs and opened Grace's closet. Lavender sachets still clung to her dresses. I reached for the shoebox on the top shelf labeled Papers. Inside was the original deed, mortgage stamped paid in full. Our signatures side by side. Just seeing her handwriting steadied me. She would have understood. She'd tell me to move before they boxed me in. Back at the table, I laid the deed next to the legal pad. Proof of ownership and the blueprint to keep it that way. By mid-morning, I was on the phone with Clara. "I want this discreet. No MLS, no open houses. Cash buyer only." Her voice didn't flinch. "I'll be there at 2. Have the deed ready." Next was Liam. When I told him I wanted it closed in under 10 days, he laughed, until I mentioned the waterfront, the custom build, the 30 years of maintenance records. Then he went quiet, the kind of quiet you hear when a predator locks onto prey. "I'll have 3 buyers in mind by tonight," he said. When I hung up, my hands were steady. The plan wasn't an idea anymore. It was a machine, and I was the only one holding the wrench. Ethan and Laura thought they were writing my ending. They didn't realize I was halfway through theirs. I stepped outside. The sound stretched cold and endless. I could almost see Grace leaning against the railing, watching me the way she used to when I started a project too big for one man. She'd smile and say, "You always did like a challenge." This wasn't a challenge. This was correction, a recalibration. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to respect your life and start defending it yourself. I locked the door behind me, not out of fear, but to hear the click, solid and final. From this moment forward, every move would be toward one goal: leaving this house on my own terms, my story intact, and watching from a distance as they realized they had lost the one thing they thought they already owned. Clara arrived at 2 p.m. sharp, her coat still damp from the mist rolling in off Elliott Bay. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She dropped her briefcase on the kitchen island like she was placing a chessboard between us. Walk me through it. Once. Fast. I gave her everything. The overheard call, the plan to slide a power of attorney into a stack of emergency contact forms, the pre-booked memory care tour I never agreed to. She didn't blink, didn't ask if I was sure, just took notes in quick, efficient strokes. When I finished, she tapped the pen twice. We can do this, but you'll have to move faster than they can think. You want this clean, invisible, irreversible. That means no MLS, no open houses. We sell off market to a cash buyer who wants speed more than a bargain. I slid Liam Harper's business card across the counter. Clara's mouth twitched into a half smile. He's a shark. You'll like him. Before she left, she leaned in. Martin, once you start, there's no pause button. The moment they get even a whiff of this, they'll try to stall you. You've got the deed, you've got equity. That's leverage. Use it now. Her car hadn't cleared the driveway before I was dialing Liam. He picked up on the first ring. I told him exactly what I had. Waterfront property, custom build, original owner, 30 years of meticulous upkeep. All cash, closing in under 10 days. No haggling, no delays. I've got 3 buyers who'll want that yesterday, he said. Can I walk it tonight? 6 o'clock. That gave me 4 hours to strip the house of hesitation. I moved through each room like a man defusing a bomb, tagging the pieces of my life I'd take with me. Grace's jewelry box went into an old army duffel. The shoebox of papers stayed under my arm. The hand-carved sailboat Ethan made in 6th grade, I almost left it. But no, that was my memory, not his to reclaim. In the den, my framed engineering certificate from Ohio State came down from the wall. That one was deliberate. If they thought I was slipping, they could look at 30 years of signed calculations and choke on the proof. By the time Liam arrived, the place was staged like a museum. He walked it slow, murmuring about lines, natural light, and original finishes. When his eyes landed on the cedar cabinets, he turned to me. Custom? Every inch. He nodded once, like that sealed it. I'll have offers by tomorrow morning. Price it at 1.05 to move it fast, but still make anyone trying to undercut you bleed. After he left, I called Clara. She was already drafting the seller's agreement. You'll have it by 9 a.m. Sign, notarize, send back the same day. If we play this right, you could be closed in 8 days. 8 days. That became the drumbeat in my head. Step 1, cut off intrusion points. I called Reyes, a locksmith I'd worked with during my contracting days. Every lock on this place swapped. Cash, no receipts. He could do it in 2 hours when I gave the word. Step 2, redirect the mail. That night, I drove to the post office and filed a change of address to a UPS store box in West Seattle. No one snooping in my mailbox would get anything useful. Step 3, find a base. I started calling furnished rentals under a false name. 1 bedroom, flexible lease, ready to move. I had 3 potentials by morning. Liam's call came at 8:15 a.m. 2 offers, both over asking, both cash. One from a California couple eager to retire by the water. One from a local developer who wanted the place as is. Clara vetted the contracts while I worked another list. what I'd leave behind to make the handoff seamless. Furniture? Most? Appliances? All. Grace's piano? Painful, but yes, I had to travel light. That afternoon, I went to a property auction downtown. Not to buy, just to watch. Millions moved in minutes. No hesitation, no backward glances. That was the speed I needed. On the way home, I bought a prepaid cell phone with cash. Ethan and Laura would keep calling my old number, never knowing I had another line entirely. My old phone would stay live, feeding them the illusion I was still where they left me. By day 3, Liam called with the final number, $1,050,000. The Californians were ready to wire a deposit immediately. Clara arranged for the notary to come to the house under the guise of estate planning. When I signed, the pen felt like a hammer hitting the last nail on a coffin lid. There was no celebration, just movement. I booked Reyes for lock change the morning after closing, reserved a storage unit under my middle name, lined up a moving crew that could pack in 4 hours and keep their mouths shut. By now, I was speaking less, even to myself. The plan had its own momentum. My job was to keep pace. The fourth night, I stood at the end of the driveway, looking back at the house. The porch light I'd wired myself glowed against the cedar siding. Inside, the grandfather clock ticked toward an ending no one else could hear. Grace used to say the real power wasn't in winning arguments, it was in walking away before someone could push you. I wasn't just walking away. I was going to vanish so cleanly that all they'd have left was the echo of the door shutting behind me. Closing day came faster than I thought possible. At 10 in the morning, the notary slid the final packet of papers across the kitchen island. Her pen was smooth, efficient. My signature looked calm on the page, but I could feel the tension vibrating through my chest. When the last document was signed, she packed her bag and left without ceremony. Just like that, the house was no longer mine. The buyers, a retired couple from Santa Barbara, wired the funds within the hour. Clara called to confirm the deposit hit the escrow account, her voice steady. "You've done it, Martin. Funds will be in your possession the morning after closing. Now, you need to disappear before they come home." The trigger wasn't the signature. The trigger was the timing. Ethan and Laura were flying back from Napa in 9 days. I had 8 days to turn their homecoming into a shock they'd never recover from. First, I called Reyes. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Front, back, side. Every lock changed. I'll pay cash. He didn't ask why. Professionals don't. Then I called the moving crew. They could be there within 24 hours. I gave them precise instructions. Pack only the items I tagged with red tape. The rest could stay exactly where it was. Their job wasn't to empty the house, it was to erase any trace of Ethan and Laura's possession in it. By the third call, I was speaking to the storage facility manager on the industrial side of West Seattle. Unit big enough for furniture, month-to-month lease, under Brooks, middle name, not last. Cash. He gave me an address and a gate code. The next morning, Reyes arrived with a toolbox the size of a suitcase. By 10 a.m., the old brass locks were gone. In their place, brushed steel deadbolts with a sharp mechanical click. He handed me 3 keys, no duplicates. I put one on my key ring, one in my pocket, and the third in the glove compartment of my truck. "These are high security," he said. "No hardware store copies." Perfect. That afternoon, I unpacked the box that held my camera equipment. It had been years since I touched it, but I knew exactly what I was going to do. I drove to an electronics store and bought a smart doorbell camera with hidden internal storage. The clerk tried to upsell me on cloud monitoring. I told him I wanted it self-contained. No signals to trace, no accounts to hack. Back home, I installed it in under an hour. The lens had a clear view of the porch, the driveway, and the exact spot where I would tape my letter. I tested the motion alert on my phone. Instant ping, crisp image. Watching the footage on my screen felt like leaning forward in a theater, waiting for the curtain to rise. Now I needed the letter. Not a rant, not an explosion of anger. They didn't deserve my rage. They deserved precision. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, writing, crossing out, rewriting. I listed every sacrifice they'd forgotten, every betrayal I'd overheard. The closing lines were deliberate, unflinching. You planned to move me out of my life. Instead, I've moved you out of my house. It has been sold. The proceeds are secure. Your belongings are in storage at the address below. You have 30 days to collect them. This is not revenge. It is correction. Remember it every time you see a door you cannot open. I placed the letter in a heavy white envelope, addressed in the clean block letters I used on engineering schematics. That handwriting had convinced inspectors to sign off on bridges. It would hold their eyes now. Day 5, the movers arrived. They were fast. Too fast for anyone driving by to assume it was anything more than routine work. By mid-afternoon, every piece of furniture they'd brought into this house was loaded and gone. The rooms felt lighter. Not empty. Mine again. I spent that evening in the master bedroom, the one place I'd been avoiding. Grace's side of the bed was still perfectly made. Her scarf hung from the closet door handle, catching the light like a ribbon of sea foam. I sat there for a long time, my letter on the nightstand beside me. This wasn't just about punishing Ethan and Laura. This was about keeping a promise, to Grace and to myself, that I would never let anyone diminish the life we built. On day 7, I packed the last of my essentials into the truck. Duffel bag, papers, the duffel with Grace's keepsakes, and the shoebox of photographs. I drove them to my new apartment on Alki, a small place with a view of the Sound. When I unlocked the door, it smelled faintly of fresh paint and new carpet. Neutral, anonymous. Exactly what I needed. That night, I drove back to the house one last time. I parked in the garage, the door shutting behind me like a vault. In the quiet, I walked to the front door, plugged the camera in, and positioned it so the lens caught the exact moment someone would stand there. I taped the envelope at eye level. Then I armed the camera and stepped back, testing the live feed from my phone. The image was sharp enough to see the grain in the wood. I took one last walk through the rooms, the cedar cabinets, the mantel with the carved whales, the garden fence. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a completed project, ready to hand over. When I stepped out the door, I locked it behind me with the new key, slid into my truck, and drove away without looking back. The trigger was set. All I had to do now was wait for the impact. At 4:57 p.m., my phone vibrated with the sharp buzz I'd been waiting for. The motion alert. I was sitting in my new apartment, the blinds half drawn, the Sound turning to dark glass as the sun dropped. I opened the feed. The porch appeared on my screen, bright in the late afternoon light. Ethan's SUV pulled into the driveway, smooth and confident, like a man arriving to claim his inheritance. Laura got out first, adjusting her sunglasses. Ethan followed, checking his phone as if nothing in his life could possibly be out of order. She reached into her bag, pulled out the key ring, and climbed the steps with the ease of someone convinced the world would still open for her. The key slid into the lock. She twisted. It stopped dead. She frowned, tried again, jiggling it harder. The feed caught every flicker of confusion on her face. Ethan glanced up from his phone. "What's wrong?" The lock stuck. She tried again, louder this time. "It won't turn." Ethan stepped up, took the keys, tried for himself. Same result. The sound of metal grinding uselessly was as satisfying as a victory bell. He pulled the key out and stared at it, like it had betrayed him. "Back door," he said, already moving. I switched the camera view to catch him disappearing around the side of the house. 3 minutes later, he was back in frame, his expression tight. "Back door's the same, and the garage keypad's dead." Laura's voice rose. "Dead? What do you mean dead? That's impossible." "That's new hardware," Ethan said flatly, tapping the lock with his knuckle. "Brand new." She froze, then looked down. "There's something taped to the door." She peeled the envelope off, my handwriting filling the shot. She stared at it for a beat before tearing it open. I could see her eyes moving left to right, faster and faster. Her hand flew to her mouth. "He sold it." Ethan snatched the paper from her. His jaw clenched as he read. The silence on the porch was heavier than any shouting could have been. Then he spoke, low and sharp. "Every cent. Gone." "He put our stuff in storage," she said, her voice pitching higher. 30 days to get it out." "You mean 30 days before we have to pay to get it out?" Ethan snapped. The mask slipped fast. Laura stepped in close. "We had a plan, Ethan. You were supposed to keep him calm until we could… Until we could what? Trick him into signing over his life?" He waved the letter in her face. "Well, congratulations. You spooked him instead." She threw her hands up. "Me? You're the one who told him about the stove incident. You're the one who said we needed the house now before he… Before he burned it down? Yeah, I said it. And I was right. But I didn't think you'd go straight for the jugular with cafes and retirement dreams before we had anything locked down." They were loud now. The porch turned into a stage, each line sharper than the last. Laura's voice cracked. "Do you realize what we've lost? That house was our way out. I've been working 14-hour days to make that cafe plan happen, and now we've got nothing," Ethan cut in. "You think your salary's going to cover rent, loans, car payments? My consulting gig's been dry for 3 months. The house was the plan." It hit me then they were already closer to the edge than I'd known. This wasn't just greed. This was desperation wrapped in entitlement. Laura stepped back, folding her arms. "So, what's your genius plan now? Go grovel to your father? He obviously doesn't want to hear from us." "Grovel? After what you said to him?" "What I said? You were right there." "I was trying to slow you down," Ethan shouted. "You don't know him like I do. Once he decides something, that's it." The irony almost made me laugh. He was finally telling the truth. Laura's shoulders dropped. For the first time since they arrived, her voice softened. "We could call a lawyer?" Ethan shook his head. "You think he didn't cover himself? This is done. He's not confused. He's not sick. He just outplayed us." The wind picked up, catching the edge of the letter still in his hand. He folded it carefully, slid it into his pocket. Then, without a word, he picked up their suitcases and started down the steps. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "To figure out where we're sleeping tonight," he said over his shoulder. "Because it's not here." Laura stayed on the porch for a moment, staring at the locked door as if it might open out of pity. Then she followed him down, heels clicking against the wood. The feed went still. The porch empty. I sat back in my chair, the phone warm in my hand. My pulse was steady. No thrill, no rush, just the clean, quiet satisfaction of an equation balanced perfectly. They had arrived expecting to find a door swinging wide for them. Instead, they'd met the unmovable reality of steel locks and final decisions. The storm had hit, and I'd been the one to set the barometer. The morning after the storm, I woke to the sound of gulls instead of the hollow ticking of the grandfather clock. My new apartment was small, but the windows faced the sound, and the sunlight spilled across the floor in a way that felt like possibility. For the first time in months, I didn't open my eyes wondering what trap was waiting for me. The air was mine. The view was mine. My life was mine. I made coffee in the little galley kitchen, the bitter smell curling into the air. It wasn't Grace's blend, and the mug was chipped, but it was enough. I carried it to the balcony, leaning against the railing as the ferry cut across the water. I thought of all the mornings I'd spent in that old house, surrounded by walls that had heard every sacrifice, every argument, every plan. Now, those same walls belonged to someone else, and the freedom in that fact surprised me. The letter I'd left for Ethan and Laura had done more than lock them out of a house. It had locked them out of my head. They weren't coming through that door again, not in person, not in thought. That chapter was done. The rest of the book was mine to write. By mid-morning, I was sitting in the community center, filling out the sign-up sheet for a beginner's photography class. The instructor, a man in his 70s named Walt, asked me if I'd ever worked with a camera before. "Not in years," I told him. He grinned. "Good. Means you'll see everything fresh." That afternoon, I met two people who would become anchors in my new life. Tom, a retired pilot with a laugh that shook the walls, and June, a widow who had just finished a solo road trip across the country in a beat-up camper van. She told me over coffee. I sold my house, gave my kids their share early, and left. Best thing I ever did. Freedom tastes better than any inheritance. I knew exactly what she meant. Still, there were moments the past tried to creep in. On the second evening, my phone lit up with a number I recognized but hadn't saved. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. No voicemail, no text, just silence, the way it should be. I spent my third day walking the shoreline, the camera strap around my neck. I shot the gulls mid-flight, the rusted hulls of fishing boats, a father teaching his daughter how to skip stones. Every image felt like a piece of the world I was reclaiming. That night, I framed the best photo and hung it on the wall by the window. It wasn't just decoration, it was proof I was building something again. One evening, I took a detour on my way back from the store, driving past the street where the old house stood. I didn't slow down, didn't stop. Just let my eyes flicker over the roofline, the porch light glowing in someone else's story now. There was no pull to go back, no ache in my chest. Only the solid knowledge that I had done exactly what needed to be done. The money from the sale sat in a private account Clara had helped me set up. Not a fortune by the world's standards, but enough to live the rest of my life without asking anyone for permission. Enough to keep me out of any trap, no matter who tried to set it. I had no intention of spending it carelessly. Security was the real luxury now. Some evenings I'd walk down to the pier just before sunset. That's where I met Sarah, who ran the small coffee stand there. She remembered my order after the second visit and teased me about taking photos of the same view every night. "Different light," I'd tell her. She'd smile and shake her head, sliding the cup across the counter. Those brief exchanges reminded me that new connections didn't have to be heavy. They could just be easy. About 2 weeks in, I received a registered letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. I didn't have to open it to know who had sent it. I signed for it, carried it upstairs, and slid it into a drawer without breaking the seal. Not out of fear, out of choice. I wasn't going to let them dictate my time anymore. If it was important, Clara would hear about it first. The most surprising part of this new life wasn't the peace. It was the energy. Without the constant weight of suspicion and defense, my mind was free to move forward. I started making lists again, not of defenses, but of ideas, places to visit, skills to learn, people to meet. I hadn't realized how much I'd been living in reaction until I felt the shift. One Sunday morning, I took the ferry to Bainbridge Island with Tom and June. We walked through art galleries, had lunch in a tiny seafood shack, and ended the day sitting on the deck, watching the tide roll in. June turned to me and said, "You don't look like a man who just burned his bridges." I laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. "I didn't burn them," I said. "I built a better road." That night, back in my apartment, I stood at the window with the sound stretching dark and endless beyond the glass. I thought about Grace, about how she'd always told me not to give so much that I disappeared in the process. I whispered into the quiet. I listened this time, and I knew this was just the start. There would be more photos, more trips, more mornings where the only sound was the gulls, and the only weight I carried was my camera. I had walked out of a house, but I had stepped into my life. I used to think the measure of a man was how much he could give before breaking. Turns out, it's knowing when to stand up, even to the people you love, and say, "No more." Walking away from that house wasn't just about keeping bricks and boards. It was about keeping the part of myself that had built them. Life will test you. It will ask you to trade your values for comfort, your peace for someone else's gain. But honor isn't something you inherit. It's something you defend, day by day, choice by choice. And sometimes the greatest act of love is not handing over what someone hasn't earned. So, if you've ever been pushed to the edge, remember this. Your worth isn't decided by who stays in your life, but by the courage you keep when they try to take it. You've just heard my story. If it stirred something in you, hit subscribe, click like, and share this video so more people can remember that respect, sacrifice, and justice still matter. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I'm listening.